In the vast, silent ocean of the cosmos, two small travelers are drifting further away from us every second. They carry no fuel for engines, no living crew, and no way to return home. Instead, they carry a gift, a message etched in gold, intended for an audience that may not exist, to be found in a future we will never see. This is the story of the Voyager Golden Record. It is perhaps the most poetic act in the history of science, a time capsule, a greeting card, and a human legacy cast into the infinite dark. Tonight, we are going to look back to the late 1970s, to a moment when humanity decided to summarize the soul of Earth on a 12-inch copper disc, hoping that somewhere among the billions of stars, someone might eventually say, hello. To understand the Golden Record, we first have to understand the era of its birth. In 1977, the world was a different place. The Cold War was simmering, and the space race had shifted from the frantic dash to the moon toward a more contemplative exploration of our solar system. NASA was preparing to launch the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 probes. Their primary mission was to visit the outer giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, taking advantage of a rare planetary alignment that happens only once every 175 years. It was a once-in-many-lifetimes opportunity. Because the planets were positioned in just the right way, a spacecraft could use the gravity of one world to slingshot toward the next, conserving fuel and dramatically increasing speed. Engineers called it a grand tour of the outer solar system, something that had only existed on paper for decades. But scientists knew that once these probes finished their tour of the planets, they wouldn't just stop. The gravity of the giant worlds would fling them like stones from a slingshot, sending them out of our solar system and into the interstellar void. These machines were being built to survive unimaginable extremes: radiation, freezing temperatures, and decades of isolation. Long after every scientist involved in the mission was gone, the Voyagers would continue onward in silence. Knowing that these probes would outlast humanity itself, a small team led by the astronomer Carl Sagan was given a monumental task. They had less than 6 weeks to decide what represented the human race. If an alien civilization were to find one of these craft millions of years from now, what should they know about us? What sounds, what images, and what music define what it means to be alive on this pale blue dot? The result was the Golden Record, a gold-plated copper phonograph record, encased in an aluminum jacket with a needle and a set of symbolic instructions on how to play it. The cover itself is fascinating. Since any beings who found the record would not understand human language, the instructions had to rely entirely on mathematics and physics. The jacket includes diagrams showing the transition of hydrogen atoms, used as a universal unit of measurement and time. There are pulsar maps pointing back toward our sun, essentially giving the cosmic address of Earth. It is both brilliant and strangely vulnerable. Humanity carved directions to its home into a piece of metal and launched it into the galaxy, trusting that intelligence elsewhere would understand the language of science. Imagine the atmosphere in that small office at Cornell University. Sagan, along with creative director Anne Druyan, Frank Drake, Timothy Ferris, Linda Salzman Sagan, and others, were surrounded by stacks of photographs, vinyl records, and books. They were trying to solve an impossible puzzle. How do you explain a mountain to someone who has never seen Earth? How do you explain the sound of a mother's kiss or the complex math of a heartbeat? They debated constantly. Every choice meant excluding something else. Entire civilizations, art forms, and histories had to somehow fit onto a single record. They began with the sounds of Earth. They didn't just want a list of facts. They wanted a soundscape of our home. The record begins with greetings in 55 different languages. Some are formal and ancient, like Sumerian and Hittite, while others are modern and hopeful. One message in Akkadian, a language already dead for thousands of years by 1977, reaches even further back into human history. Another greeting in Chinese wishes peace to all peoples everywhere. One of the most touching is the greeting from a young boy, the son of one of the scientists, who simply says, "Hello from the children of planet Earth." Following these voices is a rhythmic essay in sound. It starts with the grinding of tectonic plates, the crack of thunder, and the rush of wind and rain. Then, life enters the frame. You hear birds chirping in forests, the song of a humpback whale echoing through dark oceans, the howl of a wild dog, and the rapid-fire beat of a chimpanzee. Finally, human technology arrives. The sound of a horse and cart, the click of tools, the roar of a tractor, the hiss of a kiss, the laughter of a mother and child, and the soaring thunder of a Saturn V rocket launch. In just a few minutes, the record tracks the 4-billion-year history of our planet. But the team knew that sound was only half the story. The record also contains 115 images encoded in analog form. These were not photos of war, poverty, or politics. Sagan and his team made a conscious choice to send our best side. They chose images of humans eating, drinking, and walking. They included diagrams of our DNA, the mathematical definitions of our solar system, and photos of the Great Wall of China and the Taj Mahal. There are images of a nursing mother, Olympic athletes, city streets, a supermarket, a classroom, and a man from a remote tribe holding a spear. There is even a photograph of a page from Isaac Newton's work, representing humanity's attempt to understand the laws governing the universe. Some of the images are deeply ordinary, and that may be what makes them powerful. A family sitting together, a fisherman at work, a woman licking an ice cream cone. These scenes remind us that civilization is not only made of monuments and equations. It is made of daily rituals, small joys, and fleeting moments that rarely survive history books. The Golden Record preserves them anyway. Then there is the music. Music is perhaps the most abstract of human inventions, yet it is the one that speaks most directly to our emotions. The selection process was grueling. Carl Sagan reportedly listened to nearly every genre imaginable while assembling the playlist. They included the mathematical perfection of Bach's Brandenburg Concerto and the soaring heights of Mozart's Magic Flute. Beethoven appears as well, carrying the emotional weight of centuries of classical composition. They included the raw, driving energy of Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Goode, representing the birth of rock and roll. But they also reached into the deep well of world culture. They included a Peruvian wedding song, Navajo night chants, Japanese shakuhachi music, Azerbaijani folk music, a traditional Georgian chorus, and a haunting blues track by Blind Willie Johnson called "Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground." This last track is particularly moving. It features no words, only a man humming a soulful, wordless lament. Sagan felt that even if an alien couldn't understand our languages, they would understand the loneliness and the yearning in that song. There were disagreements over the music choices. Some critics questioned why certain cultures received more representation than others. Others thought rock music was too primitive to include. Legend has it that when someone asked whether Johnny B. Goode was an appropriate selection, Carl Sagan jokingly replied that there were a lot of adolescents on the planet. The humor masked a serious truth. The record was never meant to be perfect. It was not a complete encyclopedia of Earth. It was a collage of humanity, assembled by a small group of people doing their best to capture the impossible. One of the most profound additions to the record is almost invisible. Anne Druyan, the creative director, had an idea to record the electrical impulses of a human brain and heart and translate them into sound. For an hour, she sat in a quiet room, hooked up to sensors, and thought about the history of the world, the problems of humanity, and what it felt like to fall in love. At that very moment, she and Carl Sagan had just realized they were in love with one another, a love that would last the rest of their lives. Druyan later described thinking about everything from ancient civilizations to the birth of stars, all while feeling overwhelmed by the realization that her thoughts would travel forever aboard the spacecraft. Those brainwaves, carrying the literal patterns of human thought and emotion, are now traveling past the edge of our solar system. Even if the human race were to disappear tomorrow, the physical recording of a woman in love is etched into a gold disc, preserved in the vacuum of space for billions of years. As the Voyagers left Earth, they became more than just machines. They became our ambassadors. Voyager 1 is currently the most distant human-made object in existence. It has crossed the heliopause, the boundary where the sun's solar wind gives way to the wind of the stars. It is now in interstellar space, drifting through an environment no human being will ever physically visit. Voyager 2 crossed that boundary as well, becoming the second human object to enter the space between the stars. And yet, despite their incredible distance, the probes are still speaking to us. Weak radio signals continue to arrive at Earth after traveling for more than 20 hours across space. Engineers at NASA still listen carefully for those faint whispers from the dark. Some of the spacecraft's instruments have already been shut down to conserve power, one by one, like lights slowly going out in a distant house. Eventually, sometime in the coming decade, both Voyagers will fall silent forever as their nuclear power sources finally run dry. In about 40,000 years, Voyager 1 will pass within 1.6 light-years of the star Gliese 445. Voyager 2 is on a different path, heading generally toward the constellation of Andromeda. The scale of these journeys is difficult to wrap our minds around. The stars are so far apart that the chances of the probes actually hitting a planet or being intercepted are astronomically small. Space is mostly empty. The Golden Record is a message in a bottle thrown into a cosmic ocean, with the likelihood of it being found being nearly zero. But perhaps the record wasn't really for the aliens. Perhaps it was for us. By trying to summarize humanity, we were forced to look at ourselves from the outside. In the famous pale blue dot photograph taken by Voyager 1 at Sagan's request as it left the solar system, Earth appears as a tiny flickering speck of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Looking at that photo and listening to the Golden Record, we are reminded of how small our differences are. All our wars, all our triumphs, and all our heartbreaks have happened on that tiny speck. The record is a reminder that we are one species, sharing one fragile home, with a common history and a common fate. For a brief moment in the 1970s, during a time often defined by geopolitical tension and fear, humanity chose cooperation over division. Scientists, artists, musicians, linguists, and engineers came together to create something with no military purpose, no financial reward, and no guarantee that anyone would ever see it. They simply believed that reaching outward mattered. There is a certain peacefulness in the thought of the Voyagers. Out there, far beyond the reach of our sun's warmth, the gold disks are perfectly preserved. There is no air to cause rust, no water to cause erosion, and no life to cause decay. They will remain exactly as they are today, long after the sun has expanded and swallowed the earth. Continents will vanish. Oceans will boil away. Every city we have ever built will disappear. But those small records may continue drifting quietly through the Milky Way. They are our immortal signature. If in a billion years some being from a distant star system happens to cross paths with this strange, metallic bird, they will find the instructions, they will play the record, and they will hear the wind, the wails, and the music of a civilization that once lived, loved, and wondered about the stars. They will see that we were here. They will see that we were a people who valued beauty, who sought to understand the laws of the universe, and who were brave enough to reach out into the dark. They will hear Blind Willie Johnson's hum and perhaps recognize a kindred spirit in that wordless song of the night. They may never know our names, our nations, or our histories in full, but they will know that we existed and that we tried to communicate across the impossible distances between worlds. The Golden Record is a testament to the fact that even in a universe that seems indifferent and vast, we refuse to be silent. We want to be known. We want to be remembered. In many ways, that desire is one of the most human things imaginable. Across history, civilizations carved stories into stone, painted on cave walls, wrote books, built monuments, and sent messages across oceans. The Voyager record is simply the next chapter in that ancient instinct. Instead of leaving markings on Earth, we left one among the stars. As the Voyagers continue their silent trek across the clouds of the Milky Way, we can take comfort in their journey. They carry our greetings to the future. They carry our music to the silence. And in a way, they carry a part of every person who has ever looked up at the night sky and wondered if anyone was looking back. Even if the records are never discovered, the act of sending them still means something. It says that humanity, for all its flaws and conflicts, is capable of hope, capable of curiosity, capable of creating art and science, not just for survival, but for meaning. The Voyagers remind us that exploration is not only about discovering new worlds. Sometimes it is about understanding ourselves. It is the ultimate expression of human hope. Thank you for watching Layback Historian. If you enjoyed this journey to the edge of the solar system, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the people, the science, and the events that shaped our story. Until next time, take care and keep exploring the past, even as it moves toward the future.